Hello everybody, it's Orion Sword here, and today I just finished watching the Pokemon movie, the dub I Choose You, and so far I'm decided to give my overall impressions on it, see how everything was. So, and before I get into that, I will say like a lot of spoilers, so do not watch this if you still have not seen the movie. So, my overall thoughts. So, getting started into my overall thoughts, I will say I am a bit mixed on it in concerns with the dub. With Pokemon movies, when it comes to the dub, they always have a type of phenomenal soundtracks. With the first few movies that came out, like back in the late 1990s, there have been a lot of great movies, such as Mewtwo Strikes Back, Pokemon the movie 2000, and so on during the 4Kids era. And I will say during those times that Pokemon movies have been very great in terms of the soundtrack and the performances, whatnot, and especially with the main cast, always important. So, as for this movie, well, I will give a little brief explanation on the plot, and be aware this does contain spoilers, so just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. Alright, as for the plot, well, since this goes back to the retelling of Ash and Pikachu's adventures together when they first started off, the first few scenes would be somewhat the same. Ash wakes up late, and the only difference is that he gets to Professor Oak's laboratory. He just wanting to decide to see what's his starter. He decides to choose Squirtle as his first starter, but it's already gone, and so are all the others. I would also say we did get a brief cameo appearance by Gary Oak. So I will say, even though he didn't have any type of dialogue, I will say it's kind of cool he was there, even though he had no words of dialogue. Whatever. Then after that, Ash and Pikachu finally meet each other, with Pikachu, of course, not liking Ash, just like in the first episode, and pretty much just like the first episode, they disliked each other, and basically some stuff in episode 1. However, with Ash and Pikachu, like trying to catch like a Pidgey, well, just the same, Pikachu just refuses to obey Ash at all. So I will say, I mean, this is kind of a throwback to episode 1. Pikachu disobeys Ash. Ash throws a pebble at the Spearow's head. The Spearow gets pissed and starts to peck Pikachu to death. Ash tries to protect Pikachu by telling him to go inside the Pokeball. So far, Pikachu disobeys Ash and uses one powerful Thunderbolt on the Fearow. So just like that, after they pretty much beat all the Fearow, Ho-Oh finally appears. However, in this universe, Ho-Oh leaves behind his feather, what's also known as the Rainbow Feather. So I will say, I mean, at least it's not like somewhat of a rehash of Ash's entire adventures, so at least the story is somewhat different, so it won't be predictable on what is going to happen. So, you know, I will say that is pretty cool. So far, throughout their adventures, Ash and Pikachu eventually encounter a Caterpie, and you know, just like season 1, he was able to he caught the Caterpie, so you know, eventually training up to be a Metapod later on. And you know, eventually, when Ash gets to the Pokemon Center, we finally encounter those characters that we've seen in the trailers for the past few months, and which is you know, the two trainers from Sinnoh, the female being Verity, while the male being Soji, or I'm sorry, what was his name? Well, I'll probably remember later on as I'm doing this review. So far, they encountered those two trainers, while Ash heard rumors of an Entei just lurking around the forest, because why not? And you know, they decide to at least try to battle Entei to see, just because they just want to battle. So, as they kind of battled on, that's how Ash, Verity, and the other dude, still don't know his name, have pretty much all met. After that, Ash encounters the Charmander, and the only difference is that this Charmander is not owned by Damien, as we knew from back in the original series. It's owned by this new trainer named Cross, who used to be Charmander's trainer. But just like Damien, Cross just only cares about strength and power, so that's why he pretty much ditched Charmander. So after that, Ash takes the Charmander to the cave, where the dude from Sinnoh pretty much just gave it some treatment. After that, they pretty much saw Entei just take in some Pokemon, which at least they didn't try to battle it, because otherwise I would have felt so out of place. You know, and as soon as Ash tells Ho-Oh to both the trainers from Sinnoh, eventually he knew that Sorrel, there we go, that's the guy's name from Sinnoh that I was talking about. Sorrel was telling about a story about the legend of the Rainbow Wing. And you know, whoever possesses the Rainbow Wing from Ho-Oh is basically the chosen one to at least encounter Ho-Oh at Mount Tensei. So with that, Ash basically kind of has some insight on who Ho-Oh is. Eventually, that's what also leads to Marshadow, who was apparently forced in the movie to, you know, kind of be a part of the plot for some apparent reason. I don't know. So with that, apparently Marshadow decides to go inside Ash's shadow. I don't know, it's kind of weird, and just follow him to see what he does, what he's kind of doing throughout this journey. So with that, Ash, Sorrel, and Verity eventually go out to travel out, and as soon as that's happening, Verity and Sorrel kind of start to know each other's past, and you know, with we got at least some backstory on Verity, who is the female trainer from Sinnoh, and I will say in that part of the movie, that was actually pretty something, because turns out in her flashback, when she was just thinking about her mother, it turns out that he was pretty much referencing from what she said her mother is a pretty powerful and notable trainer in Sinnoh. However, later on, when Verity just looks at her phone, just looks at all the pictures she's taking with Ash and Sorel throughout their adventures together, she actually pulls up a picture of a certain person that I never expected to be her mother, which is Cynthia from the anime, apparently. So yeah, apparently in that universe, Cynthia has a kid, which is Verity, and it is kind of weird, but whatever. This is movie 20 universe, so in reality a lot of things don't apply. That's why Ash doesn't meet Brock and Misty in this universe. So, but, and I guess they could just change the fact that that Cynthia has a kid, and that being Verity. Yeah, that's a thing. So, and well, at least it's also not canon, because that would kind of like screw up some of the continuity from the original anime, or some weird stuff like Cynthia not mentioning she had a daughter in the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl series. So yep. So anyways, as for Verity, who is the guy with the Lucario, so it turns out he was actually afraid of Pokemon, because in his childhood he had a Luxray who always looked after him. And eventually in this story, some things happened, and Verity actually and this is actually pretty dark for Pokemon to do. I'm surprised they've actually done this, and that is actually have the Luxray pass away trying to keep Sorel warm. So that kind of really left an impact on his character. So that's why he was afraid of Pokemon, until he said he met his Lucario, and that kind of changed. So even though in movie 20 these are completely new characters, and we don't really have much backstory on them, and their goals were pretty briefly mentioned, of Sorel just wanting to be a Pokemon professor. Well, I mean, I guess that is somewhat of an explanation, because they would have to develop those characters, whoever's going to be in the movie, and just screw it off, just pass them along, just because. So that's pretty much the big reason of why we don't have Brock and Misty. But and since this movie's not considered canon, I guess they pretty much just say F all. But moving further along, as Ash, Sorel, and Verity just travel along, they finally get to Mount Tensei, where they said they were going to encounter Ho-Oh. And then as soon as they do, for some reason the random pink Butterfree from the original series is actually just chased along by a Fearow, who Ash just drives on using his Butterfree, which in reality he could have just used his Pikachu, just used Thunderbolt at it, but whatever. So after that, Ash's Butterfree and the pink Butterfree become all get become really friendly with each other, and eventually, and then later on, and as soon as Ash gets to the flock of Butterfree, where it's basically mating season for them, Ash's Butterfree encounters the same pink Butterfree from before, so he could eventually like let them mate and decide to go off with the rest of the Butterfree herd. Now, just like in the original series of Pokemon, where Ash had to say farewell to Butterfree, apparently it's kind of being another throwback with him letting Butterfree go, so he could go be with the rest of the Butterfree. So just like the emotional experience, Ash says goodbye to Butterfree. It gets very emotional, and Ash, and eventually Ash just gets sad at the fact he has to say goodbye, but he knew it's for Butterfree's happiness, so that's why he had to let Butterfree go. So after that, Ash eventually meets Cross again, and then when he finds out that Cross he wants to prove Cross wrong by trying to battle him using the Charmeleon that evolved into a Charmander a while ago, with his Incineroar, but eventually he gets crushed by Incineroar. So eventually this leaves Ash in a quick state of depression. Later on, when he kind of like just ditches everybody just because he said screw all, Marshadow eventually found him, and with that we kind of get this really weird scene with Marshadow just trying to, for some reason, try to enter Ash's mind and try to actually obtain the Rainbow Wing by trying to contaminate it. With that being said, while Marshadow is trying to do that, he puts Ash in a type of comatose state, where he would kind of like put in his mental state, he would put him in a reality where there was no Pokemon. Now, in this scene, I will say that is pretty ominous when you watch this scene for yourself, if you ever get a chance to watch it in theaters or in Disney XD or in other streaming websites if it's uploaded. But with that being said, Marshadow creates a reality where Pokemon didn't even exist, and he put Ash in a type of like normal environments. And what I mean by normal, it's like Pokemon don't even exist, so there's no traveling, there's no Pokemon trainers. It's basically just regular school for Ash, where he's just pretty much just forced to like live in like the real world. Like he actually gets forced into school. Professor Oak is like one of the teachers, and he actually, when he gets into the classroom, he just asks for other people. He just asks other kids for their homework because, of course, he's the type of guy that probably doesn't do it. So, I mean, with that said, yeah, it was pretty interesting that the writers actually included something like from real world experience, or something from the real world that it's like completely opposite from what Pokemon is. And with that being said, Ash finally remembers that the bond with his just basically remembers the bonds with his friends and Pikachu, and eventually he was able to get out of that dream state that Marshadow had him in. And eventually Ash realized that he realized that he can't rely on strength alone. He has to rely on the powers of friendship and trust with his Pokemon. So with that, Ash was able to snap back from his depression and, eventually able to move forward. With that, Ash and his friends eventually go on to Mount Tensei, where he eventually meets this old man named Bonji. He eventually finds out that he finally finds out that Bonji knows all about about Ho-Oh, because he was also mentioned in a book called My Life is Ho-Oh, and eventually with that he eventually guides them to the summit, so Ash is able to encounter Ho-Oh for himself, since he is the chosen one, of course. So with that said, when Ash finally arrives to Mount Tensei is what they called it. Eventually Cross shows up and tries to take the Rainbow Wing for himself. Ash tries to battle Cross, but with that being said, with his Charmeleon. But with that said, eventually he remembered the power of friendship and trust with Charmeleon. He was able to evolve it into Charizard, and eventually he was able to stomp out Cross's Incineroar. So, which eventually leads Ash being the victor. And as Ash tries to put the Rainbow Wing on top of the pedestal where Ho-Oh was supposed to appear, Cross says that he encountered Ho-Oh, but he was not chosen by him because he didn't leave behind the Rainbow Wing. So, with that said, Cross just tries to be a douche and just takes the Rainbow Wing for himself so he can summon Ho-Oh, but apparently the plot decided to fuck him over with Marshadow just tried to appear out of nowhere and just place the Rainbow Wing on top of the pedestal, but with his heart being consumed by hatred, unfortunately that pretty much allowed Marshadow to just take the Rainbow Wing and just allowing him to possess other Pokemon, so he can pretty much control everyone for some apparent reason. So as that said, as Ash is trying to battle the Pokemon that are being controlled by Marshadow, Ash is using Pikachu to try to fight off Marshadow, but unfortunately Pikachu's kind of getting his ass kicked, and as Ash and Pikachu are trying to fight off the other Pokemon too that were attacking them, Ash decides to do the same thing like he did in episode 1. Just tried to put Pikachu in his Pokeball, and this actually caught me off guard, because I've heard rumors about this through forum posts in the Pokemon fan base from when people watch the movie in over there in Japan. I will say this, I kind of expected this to happen, and I was kind of having doubts that the dub will handle this well, but I will say they handled this scene decently. And that scene was being when before Ash was about to fade away from existence, Pikachu actually talked. He just talked to Ash. Yeah. Apparently Ash and Pikachu can do that, so yeah. And with that said, with Ash getting hit by all those Pokemon, he eventually fades away into out of existence or into heaven, or I don't know what the fuck happened. So with that said, Pikachu just finally wakes up, and then he sees that Ash is gone. Pikachu gets all butthurt, and eventually he just uses this ultimate Thunderbolt technique to just obliterate all the Pokemon, even Marshadow. And as Pikachu is kind of like crying his eyes out, his friendship with Ash, for some reason, brought him back. Yeah, he brought him back. I don't know how, but he did. And with that said, Ash and Pikachu are finally reunited with each other. And for the last part of the movie, Ash and Pikachu actually battled Ho-Oh. But that said, the movie almost kind of ends, and the ending part of that movie, well, that battle between Pikachu and Ho-Oh is pretty much shown off screen. So eventually Ash and Sorrel and Verity go their separate ways. That's pretty much almost the end of the movie. So with that said, that's pretty much the plot. Now, since this is the dub, I am going to give my overall thoughts on the dub. With the dub, boy, this is kind of hard to describe. I am kind of disappointed with the fact they did not utilize the original soundtrack from Shinji Miyazaki's and used Ed Goldfarb's themes. And I could have sworn there was a lot of themes from the Pokemon XY dub, and maybe a pinch of the Sun and Moon soundtrack, which unfortunately I kind of came in the movie with low expectations of the dub, because unfortunately the dub has had a bad reputation with the series in the past few years. But I will say maybe the dub was somewhat kind of almost decent, because in the opening of the movie, they actually kind of played the regular soundtrack of the first Pokemon dub opening, which, thank God, this one's a little more decent to kind of take in. It's not like the Pokemon XY's dub where they're literally gonna like rip off the opening that's made by Ben Dixon and the Sad Truth, or performed by Ben Dixon and the Sad Truth, because that immediately ruins the song. And so I will say it is somewhat of a decent when they were doing this whole montage with Ash. So I will say it is kind of okay. And as for the dub music, I am very they've only kept at least one soundtrack from the Japanese version, and unfortunately the songs that they were even played in the English dub of the original series were never used. None of them were, which is very disappointing. Not even Team Rocket's theme. Speaking of Team Rocket, I will get to them eventually, because do appear in the movie, but I will give a brief explanation of why I did not mention them. So, and as far as for that being said, the ending theme, I will say, it's kind of okay. Like, it wasn't Barth-worthy or an ending song to be kind of angry at. I will say it is kind of okay. So with that being said, overall thoughts on the dub. Music, unfortunately, I was not a big fan of it. It unfortunately threw off a lot of... Unfortunately, the music did not fit in with some of the scenes. It just, unfortunately, this was kind of expected, and I am very disappointed with the Pokemon Company International for not even being more considerate about this. And especially since the voice actors, the original voice actor of Ash, Veronica Taylor, is not even voicing him. And we had Sarah Natacheni. While she has improved over the years, it would have been much more fitting for at least Veronica to at least voice Ash in this movie, while Sarah could at least just voice in the main series line, because this movie is not even considered canon. So whatever. At least I will say Sarah kind of put on a good performance, so I will give her credit from that. But as far as for the music, I'm sorry, I am not a big fan of Ed Goldfarb at all. Even though some, maybe very little people in the community are, I'm sorry. His soundtracks are not likable at all in the dub. And with that being said, the dub kind of maybe ruined it a little bit for me, but I will say at least the plot was kind of somewhat, maybe a bit interesting, even though I will admit it didn't stand out to me as all too good. But it was somewhat interesting, and it was kind of good to watch a Pokemon movie in theaters, so that was pretty good. And as for the also the mention of Team Rocket, now I will say Team Rocket being in the movie, I will say Team Rocket does not have any type of importance in the movie at all. And the reason for that being is that while they are mentioned by Nurse Joy while she was talking to Verity about who they are, unfortunately they do not make any type of influence in the plot whatsoever, other than just spying on Ash, and that's it. And in this universe, Ash doesn't even know who Team Rocket is. He's never met them. And I'm talking about throughout the entire movie, where as soon as he gets to the Pokemon Center, he doesn't meet Team Rocket like right away, like in episode 2. Instead, Team Rocket just tries to follow them around, and well, as they tries to follow him around, apparently some of the plot points that kind of happen kind of prevent Team Rocket from at least getting the jump on Ash, and trying to blast them off. So apparently Team Rocket does not make any importance whatsoever, just other than just spying on Ash, just basically being the comedy relief whatsoever. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why they were not mentioned at all. So, and I will say overall, the movie was actually pretty somewhat interesting. like I have mentioned before, I am not a huge fan of the dub, especially since I probably say in the middle of the Best Wishes dub, where, yeah, unfortunately, I've noticed things started going downhill from there. But I will say the plot itself is somewhat interesting, and I will plan to watch this movie in its sub version, so to at least kind of experience it. So, you know, other than that, this movie, I will give it an okay. This movie is okay. But yeah, with that said, the experience there, I will say it's pretty good. I mean, I did get my my Pikachu card, the Pikachu training card, as well as the QRA code to get the movie 20 Pikachu for Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. So at least I got some stuff out of it, and the experience is pretty good. Overall, we had some good laughs, had some touching moments, and yeah. So with that being said, this movie is pretty okay. And if you do have the opportunity to watch this movie in said theaters, then you know what, I definitely would recommend it. Even if unfortunately there is dub music that kind of maybe ruins some of the scenes, but you know what, the plot itself is basically what you should focus on. So with that being said, thank you so much everybody for listening. This is Orion Sword, and I will say to you all, I'm sorry, I just got distracted for a bit, but I will say, you know, take care of yourselves everybody, and Orion Sword is clicking off.